is.
I'm just dancing over here.
I know I should carry on, shouldn't I?
I never got tired of the song. You know, like we played it at every wedding and I never got tired of it.
You know, me too. It is one of those songs that's played over and over again, but it gets everybody up, doesn't it? It gets everybody dancing.
It's like infectious. Like there are many other wedding songs, I'm sure you have too. When they come on, you're like, ooh. But
here we go.
Every time this came on, I would always shake my butt. Like, I can't help it.
It's perfect.
Yeah,
I know.
It's a perfect song.
I love it. I'm so happy to have you here today. Welcome.
I am so like honored and thrilled that you asked me to be here today.
Oh my gosh.
I'm a huge fan. I'm so excited to be here.
Oh my gosh, are you kidding me? I'm just like, Renee's on the show. I'm like, whatever you speak on Clubhouse or wherever, I'm like dripping on every word that you say.
It's so sweet. I just have a lot of things to say all the time.
I know, I love it. I don't know how, I don't know. I just love it. But before we get into it, you have a little introduction. So here we go.
Girl and she's on fire.
Oh yes, my guest today is on fire. She is a wedding planner, an educator, a public speaker, a podcast host called Rock Your Biz and Talk with Renee Dalo, and most importantly, a sushi addict. She has been called a no-nonsense Mary Poppins, a sweet but focused straight shooter who can make magic happen. With a theatre background, Renee opened her company, Moxie Bright Events, right after her own nuptials in 2008 and has not looked back. She is president of WIPA, the Wedding Industry Profession Association, and has just released a new educational online course called Profitable Pro Bundle. And to go with her many other courses that she has. Renee sure lives up to her company name, Moxie Bright, meaning self-possessed, confident, an attitude of fearlessness, determination, skill, and know-how. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the formidable Renee Dalo.
Wow. I'm going to hire you to come around and say that all the time.
Yeah, every time you go speak, I'll come on and do the introduction.
Charley. Can we get Charley to come? How can we get her? Yeah.
Just the introduction, and then I'll walk off. I mean, seriously, Renee, you're just like a strong women leader in this industry. You're a born educator. You have your podcast. You have your wedding planning business. How do you do it all? And is there a course for that? Because I need to know.
It's just my crazy brain. No, honestly, I mean, here's the thing. I do a lot. I don't do everything. Like, my house is a disaster. We have help. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not doing all the things. Like, last week when we did launch the bundle, I think I ordered every single meal, lunch and dinner, for a week. Like, they're just like, I think it's a kind of it's an interesting thing we do to ourselves as women, I think, right? In that we look at someone else and say, oh, she's doing everything. And it's like, nah, I look at it now and I go, I know everyone is doing their best.
Yes.
There's got to be something that gives, right? Like, I can tell you, last week during the launch, did not Peloton, did not get on that bike once. It just sat there staring at me like, what are you doing? And I'm like, well, I just don't have the bandwidth, right? So I think for everything we decide to do, we have to decide what we're willing to not necessarily give up, but negotiate for those things. And so I feel like my life is just a negotiation of like, what's most important to me now, or like, what am I feeling most called to do now? And that's been an interesting time too, like during this pandemic, right? Like the projects that we've picked up and the things we've had to let go of. Like, I don't think you did these lives before the pandemic, did you?
No, I started these literally the first, so it'll be a year next weekend. And it came about.
Happy anniversary.
Thank you. I know, I'm so excited. And we had our 100th episode on New Year's Eve. Oh. So I'm 108 now or something. This never even entered my head, but it came through the feeling of, well, how am I going to stay in contact with my wedding people? I don't want to like lose touch with everyone. And then I thought, I actually want to know who everybody is. And because like, I'll go to a networking event, I'll see you, I'll give you a hug, and then we pass ships. Yes. You know, I wanted to know, well, what's your background? What got you started? How did you, you know, and I thought this is a great way to showcase and highlight, uplift the amazing people in our industry. And I'm so thankful that I did it because I get to talk to incredible people like you.
And it's amazing too, because I think the more we know each other, the more we realize how similar we all are.
Yes.
And how, I mean, like you and I have such, I mean, you were way more successful than I was, but we have a shared background in musical theater that like we would not have known.
No.
At a random cocktail party. It would not have come up.
It would have come up because I don't really, I don't really see it that much when I'm in the wedding industry, but I know, I love that you had a theater background. How did that get started for you?
So I grew up in New York City. So I'm originally from Brooklyn. So I sort of grew up I mean, Broadway was just normal for me growing up. Like that was where we saw shows. I mean, we weren't wealthy at all. I remember the first show I ever saw on Broadway was 42nd Street in 1980.
My first show. My very first show.
But you did the revival.
No, I straight out of school when I was like a teenager, like 16, was my I just give my age away, but it was I was in the chorus in 42nd Street. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. So growing up in New York City, they run commercials in New York for Broadway shows, and I think people who don't live there don't know that. But as a kid growing up, you're surrounded by this media that like these Broadway shows. And so there was a commercial when I was a kid. The commercial for 42nd Street was the curtain raising on the tapping.
Yeah,
with the opening of the show. Goosebumps, right? And I was I was maybe 6. I was tiny enough that I could fit in a theater seat sitting crisscross applesauce. That's how young I was. And I begged and begged and begged and begged. And my dad tells the story that was the first show that had like really bumped up their theater, like their price. Like you used to be able to go for like $20 and that was like $40. This is like back in the 80s. So my dad had to like scrimp and save to get us these tickets. And we were sitting in the 5th row. I don't know why or how we did it. Probably because I was so small that he knew I needed to see. And we sat down and these 2 old ladies in front of us turned to my father and said, "I hope your daughter behaves herself." And he said, "Oh, don't worry about her. She's not going to say a peep." And for like 2.5 hours, I was just like, the whole time.
God. But you see, okay, that upsets me because those 2 ladies could have really upset you and you could have carried that forever. You know, that just, some people are mean. And we don't like mean people.
But they didn't understand, like, I was a very serious child. And so like, I was just like, we left and my dad goes, "What do you think?" And I was like, "That's what I want to do." Now, I'm not an excellent tap dancer. I've never been I did not become a dancer. I became a singer, actor, or actor, singer, I guess, if you want to put it in that order. But that was the thing that made me think like, oh, I want to do what they're doing. Like whatever's happening up there, I should be up there, not sitting here. You know?
So you would have seen Leroy Reams, who was the original Billy Lawler in that show, and he was on my show about a month ago.
Oh, I have to go watch it.
Yes.
I have to go watch it.
Yeah.
So that kind of became my thing. And then, you know, growing up in New York City, I did have access to a ton of fabulous teachers and schools. So I was at Lee Strasberg and, you know, I did all the New York City kid theater things. Like I did all of it. And then I went to school in Chicago for theater. And then I eventually went back home, New York. And then I did some national tours. I did some like pre-Broadway workshops, never made it to Broadway, left New York before then. It's different when your family lives in New York. It's just like living in any other small town. Yeah. You know? And I had that pull to like try something new. And so I came out here and I've been here for like 20 years.
Oh, wow. Yeah. We must have come out at the same time then. I've just done 21 years out here in LA.
Yeah. I was here right before 9/11.
Oh, wow.
I moved a few months before. Yeah.
Gosh. Yeah, that changed everything, didn't it? 9/11.
It did. You know, I had been on tour for the 3 years before I moved here. So I was literally living out of a giant suitcase. And, you know, I like to joke with people that they're like, why did you pick LA? I'm like, well, because growing up in New York, you tend to think that every place is like New York because you don't know any better. And then you see the country and you're like, oh, there's many other places I could live. And I had all this money saved from tour. There's not that much you can do. I mean, you can't shop on tour. You're living out of a suitcase. Right. So I just figured I'd try it out here. And then I really just like the lifestyle here. It's great.
Oh, it is. It is the best lifestyle I was like, same as you. Should I go to New York at a certain point? Should I stay here? And I was like, oh no, I'm going to stay here. I like the breadth. I like the sun. Yeah. I love New York, but I kind of wanted to push the ceiling and I wanted some room to breathe. Yeah. But don't you find though that having that theatrical background really helps you with producing a wedding? Because it's like we're putting 100%. On a show.
100%. And I think people who don't have a theater background don't necessarily understand what we're talking about when we say that. But like my very first national tour was a union children's theater tour where we pulled in, we drove a van, like 6 of us, I think. We pulled in, unloaded the van, put up the cheap set, did the show, tore down the set, put it back in the van, went somewhere else. Like that was my life when I was like 21 for like 9 months. That was a 9-month contract. And I was so happy to have that job. Right. But great. A wedding is kind of like that. Like it's kind of like that, you know, DIY kind of do it yourself in a way that we don't have like sometimes big production, you know, trucks rolling in. But like it's the same thing. You set up a world, you create the world, you have the performance, you have the event, you pack it up, you go home, you look around, you're like, we were never here.
Yeah, right? I know. It's so similar. And so when you're like doing the timeline and when you're doing the flow of the event, I mean, you know, you and I would be very conscious of like the energy dipping in the room. And sometimes people look at me like I have 2 heads.
No, I'm a stickler for like the flow of the event, like how people are going through the space, and like,
too.
and like, does it feel like we shouldn't be doing a toast right now? Like, I'm
Yes.
very in tune, and that totally is like, we're reading the audience, like
Yes.
we're reading the guests as the audience to be like, is this joke gonna land? Like, I can tell you when someone gets up to do a speech, I can already tell you if it's gonna be a home run or not. I'm like, oh, this crowd is not on his side. Like,
yeah. And then you want the DJ and say, get ready to play the music early. We went to yes.
The best DJ partners of mine are the ones who know that I'm gonna be standing next to them, kind of being like, we're gonna cut this one off. Like,
like, exactly.
You know, I'm not telling them what to do, but like, there are certain moments where, like, as planners, we need to push it along because we are the producers of the event. Exactly.
And I hate the gap between when there's speeches, right? The next person comes up. Oh, if there's a gap, I'm like, oh no. I'm like, it
makes me so uneasy.
Me too. Yeah. It's being able to read the room, and during dinner, I don't know if you do this, but I like to walk around and I like to like figure out, you know, how many people are left eating, because there's like a finite moment, isn't there, between dinner, eating, and doing the speeches, and if you lose them, you've lost your audience.
And then they're talking to one another, and then the person, God help the person who can't like command an audience, who's like up there like, hi everyone.
Is this on?
And you're like, pay attention to the people. Like, I get really deep into it with my clients too, where I'm like, your best speaker has to go first. And I think they think I'm like being super extra, but it's important to me. I mean, I don't want to say it's a production because it's their heartfelt day. Of course, it has more meaning. But for me,
it is on our end.
It needs to go a certain way so that I feel like this was seamless. I don't want to say flawless because stuff happens, but for me, I don't want to see seams. I don't want to see dips in energy. I don't want to see people missing cues. Like, when I can't find someone when it's their time to have a toast.
Oh my God. And you know that you're like, the energy is slowly going down and they're in the loo. They're talking to someone. I'm like, no, you don't understand. I've got like maybe a minute before they die.
Yes. Oh, thank you for understanding this. I'm also a big pain in the butt about bands. Because me
too.
So like, I have a client now who really wants to hire this band that I don't particularly love. And I'm always like, but listen to their downbeat. It's messy. It's not clean. And they're like, it sounds fine to me. I'm like, of course it sounds fine to you. Like,
you don't get it. Yeah.
And I have to remove the part of my brain that's a musician and just be like, no, you like it. You like them. That's fine. That's what we're going to do.
Yeah. And that's why MCs are super important to me. Like, I need to know who's going to make the announcements. Yes. I don't know if you've ever done this, but I had, I was right at the beginning, I was doing a wedding with Kathy, a lovely wedding planner in Orange County. And the MC was terrible on the microphone. He got the guests in, the bride and groom in, saying, you know, please welcome, Mr. and Mrs. I mean, energy was terrible. And I went up to him and I took the micro and I went, sorry, you're not speaking anymore for the rest of this wedding. And I said to Kathy, can I do the MCing, please? Not that I don't want to do the MCing, but I knew that it was going to die.
But I will. I did this wedding a few years ago. It was the biggest wedding I've ever done to this day. It was half Indian. Groom was Indian. Bride was like comedy writer from Chicago, like white girl. Yeah. And they had an Indian DJ and a band. They had a bunch of entertainment, and basically no one really felt comfortable emceeing. And so the bride said to me, we had this really fairly complicated like double buffet system where there was like an Indian buffet, an American buffet. And she's like, you have to explain it to people. And I was like, Robin, she's like, it has to be you, and just say some jokes. And I was like, just say it's a room of comedy writers. Yeah, just say some jokes. But honestly, in that moment, I was like, you know what, that was actually right. I should have said it, because I was able to get people to pay attention to me and hold their attention. And these are just like skills that we have as performers that I don't really know how to teach someone how to do those things.
You can't teach that, and you can't teach the timing and feeling it in your stomach. You can't teach it, but
I try. My assistants try really hard. They understand when it happens. Like after it happens, they go, oh, I could see you getting annoyed. Like, but knowing it's happening beforehand is the thing that's like, oh, okay, that's interesting.
Anticipating that it's going to happen. Yeah. It's so much fun, isn't it? That's one of my exciting parts of a wedding is the flow. And when you get it just right and the band is on point, and it's just like, oh, this is magic. You know?
Yes, agreed.
I love that. It's so exciting. How did wedding come into your life from acting?
So when I moved out to LA, I had a resume full of musical theater and like fine dining restaurants. Like, what are you going to do with that here? Right. Yeah. Like, I was auditioning for like TV roles and just trying to find a sustenance job. And so I ended up finding a job at this restaurant that was opening when the